In this video, we are going to cover how suppressed emotions actually show up in the body. Hello, beautiful family. Welcome to my YouTube channel. I am Dr. Sarah. I'm a naturopathic doctor and an East Asian medicine practitioner, and I work mostly in the mind, body, and mental emotional realm to really help support people out of invisible and chronic illnesses like autoimmune disease, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, mast cell activation, chronic digestive distress, and mental illness, to step into true freedom and liberation, not only in their bodies, but also in their lives. So in this video, we are going to cover how suppressed emotions actually show up in the body. We're going to do a deep dive into the neuroscience of what is this bridge, like how are these things that are in the mind and in the mental emotional realm, how do they actually show up in our physiology? And then we're going to be finishing with how to actually access and free yourself from these stored and stuck emotions, so you can step out of dis-ease, dysregulation, symptoms, and pain, and step into true freedom and liberation. For the purposes of this video, we can think of the two different minds that we contain. We have our conscious mind, and then we have our unconscious mind. So our conscious mind is the one that is listening to this right now. We can think of our conscious mind kind of like our adult self. It's the one that's very rational. It is able to process and take in information and not be really reactive and emotional. And then our unconscious mind, we can think of like our little inner child. It is like our little inner 2-year-old where there is no amount of rationale or groundedness or thoughtfulness that will get through to that little 2-year-old inside of us. Most of the things that we do, the things that we say, and the patterns that we are stuck within are actually because of our unconscious mind. So what is the role of the unconscious mind? The role of the unconscious mind is to keep us safe. It is to keep us functioning optimally, and it is always there to protect us from internal pressures and internal threats as well as external threats. So our unconscious mind might react in a way that doesn't make a lot of sense to our conscious mind. So we could be going throughout life and get triggered by an experience, by a person, whatever it is, and we can have two worlds that are going on. So our conscious mind can rationalize and empathize and be like, oh, that person's going through a hard time. They didn't really mean it. We can make sense of it. We can find peace. But there's a whole other world that's going on internally in our unconscious mind that does not have those same tools that our conscious mind has. So our unconscious may react in ways that are not logical and not rational in the same way that our conscious mind would understand them. And so this tendency for irrationality and being illogical in our unconscious mind is so incredibly vital and important to understanding how these repressed and suppressed emotions actually show up in our bodies. So suppressed and repressed emotions live deep within the unconscious mind, where they strive to come to consciousness in order to be seen, heard, felt, and held in order to be transmuted. But our unconscious mind is absolutely terrified at the notion of these scary repressed emotions coming into consciousness, that it will do absolutely anything to prevent that from happening. And since we actually process physical and emotional pain in the same part of our brain actually creates a distraction through physical pain and symptoms in order to keep us from having to experience all of those scary repressed emotions. And this might sound incredibly silly to our conscious mind, the one, again, that's receiving this video right now in these words, and that's because it is. Most people, when given the option of feeling uncomfortable feelings or living a life of chronic disease and illness and pain and symptoms, they would choose the feelings. But again, since our brains are evolutionarily wired to keep us safe, and we do process physical and emotional pain in the same parts of our brain thinks it's doing this beautiful, gorgeous job at keeping us safe. And for my invisible disease clients, this neuroscience is equally frustrating and annoying as it is beautiful. It's frustrating and annoying because we don't want to be living lives in chronic pain and disease, but it's a beautiful thing because since we do know this neuroscience, it means we can do something about it. And when it comes to the specific emotions that are repressed and suppressed, what are those? What are the big ones that come to the forefront? Luckily, we have these big, beautiful, gorgeous bodies of study from some OGs like Dr. Gabor Mate, Dr. John Sarno, that tell us that suppressed rage and anger are actually the biggest burden to our bodies and are going to create the biggest amount of pain and symptoms in the body. It's really important to remember that no matter how we are consciously reacting to life's pressures, there is a whole other world going on internally. And so where some of these internal rage and anger comes from are three different things. So one is the anger and the rage that has been born out of infancy and childhood through the things that we experienced as children that we have gathered and we have brought with us into adulthood. The second is the everyday stresses of being a human on Earth. And then the third is the internal pressures that we put on ourselves. So a really big thread in people that are chronically ill and have invisible disease is that we are people pleasers, we are overachievers, we are perfectionists. That creates so much internal pressure. And we can't really talk about suppressed anger without talking about grief. And that is because suppressed anger and rage, I always think of this crust. And we might have some emotions on the top. We might have irritability or being withdrawn or being sad or being anxious or dysregulated. And a lot of us just stay on the top of this big crust of anger. And beneath this big crust of anger, we have this ocean of grief and love and tenderness that it's protecting, because anger in its native form is there to protect us. So these repressed and suppressed emotions are constantly striving to come to consciousness. They just want to be heard, felt, seen, held, so they can be transmuted and liberated from the body. And this is important to remember in the medicine of all of this and actually how to do this work, because once we actually bring those emotions into our conscious awareness, they are no longer repressed. We talked about the neuroscience of repressed and suppressed emotions. It is just the brain trying to create a distraction from the emotions. So when we actually bring those emotions into our conscious awareness, it collapses the need for a distraction. It collapses the need for the avoidance of the emotions because we're with them. We are holding them in our conscious awareness. So when it actually comes to the medicine around tapping into and accessing these stored and stuck emotions, this is how we do this work. I always say it is so simple, but it is not easy, right? Revisiting and really making space for all of that hurt and the things that we have been through, accessing all of that internal rage and anger and grief and tenderness and hurt is not easy, but it is so simple in the ways that we can create space for ourselves to do that. So one of my favorite ways to access rage and anger is through ceremony. Same with grief. So in every single container that I host online, I host rage ceremonies. And so that looks like just being with the emotion of anger, not trying to change it, not trying to get rid of it. You go into that ceremony just creating space for your body, for you to actually presence that anger and that rage instead of trying to get rid of it, which will happen, like I said, as we actually allow space for ourselves to be with those emotions. There is a transmutation. Just by gifting space and awareness to those things, there will be a transmutation. You can also do a grief ceremony. These are also very, very beautiful. I love doing emotion ceremonies and just allowing yourself space to be with whatever is there, whatever is present, whatever is coming up in that moment. So emotion ceremonies, doing rage or grief ceremonies is a beautiful way to do this work and to actually rewire your brain. And then another really easy thing to do is expressive writing, as this creates a lot of distance between you and what you're experiencing. It also allows you to take those stuck and stored emotions and get them out and transmute them onto something else outside of you. A lot of my clients will call these rage pages, where you just actually write out every single thing that is making you upset. It works so amazingly. If you're ever in a chronic state of pain, doing expressive writing by writing out every single thing that you're enraged about is incredibly powerful. It can basically dissolve your pain within 15-20 minutes. You could also make expressive writing a part of your every single day. So just 5 to 15 minutes, just a stream of consciousness, just writing out every single thing that comes into your mind. One of my favorite ways to do this work too is to just work with your triggers. So I will definitely be diving into this in another video, but working with your triggers is such a beautiful way to illuminate the places that we are not free. And so whatever triggers you, the people, relationships, experiences that trigger you are always pointing you to the places that you're not free, that you're holding on to something, you're holding on to a wound, you're holding on to an emotion, you're holding on to a belief. And by allowing yourself to work with that trigger, you can free yourself of it. So this is a beautiful way, creating ceremony, creating space for yourself to move through whatever is present with that trigger is another beautiful way to do this work. If this work really interests you and calls to you and you want to learn more and you also want to be held in a space where you can do it, you can be taught and also do it in community, I invite you to check out my Root Cause Academy. It is an online course with the addition of my Mind Body Masterclass series, which runs 4 times a year. They are 8-week cohorts where we join an intimate community and we do all of this work together. So we join in community and we go through all of the different mind body practices, the different somatic practices, the different emotion ceremonies, and it's a place where we can practice this work together. And you also can ask me anything, ask me questions, be reflective. I can highlight the places where you are feeling stuck in your own journey, and it just calls in the most beautiful and gorgeous humans. It's been the most transformative space I've ever hosted, and this work is so powerful. People go into this work wanting to heal their bodies, and they end up healing their entire lives. It's so gorgeous, and it's such a blessing to be here with all of you. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you next time.